I'm Davini. I'm from Toronto, like Peter said, and I'm doing my master's in food science and immersion here. I'm still in my first year. I just came here like 9 months ago. I'm just thinking of something to say. I've been studying food science for a long time now, and I've been liking it here so far. Yeah.
My name is John Alon, and I'm from Ghana. I'm studying a master's degree in civil engineering, a master's degree, and hopefully I could continue with a PhD. I joined in fall last year. It's been such a wonderful experience. And I believe I can share more when we begin.
Hi, my name is Doris, and I'm a master student, and this is my first year. But I've already been there for about 3 or 4 years already, because we have a program, undergrad program. So I'm here for like learning cross-country skiing. So I'm also part of cross-country skiing teams, and this is my coach Christy. So this is my first year master student. So yeah, I'm glad to be here to share my thoughts.
Christy is Aksana. Okay, so we can just talk with her, right? Aksana, can you hear me? Okay, so would you be so kind and introduce yourself?
Hi, can you hear me?
It's a little bit low.
Can you hear me better this way?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I need to be closer to my computer. Hi, everyone. Thank you for bearing with us with all the technical difficulties. I'm Aksana Wassalic. I work at the L. Boggan Center for Teaching and Learning as an instructional designer. For almost 9 years now. I've been in a position that is similar to mine. And I've been a graduate student at the University of Wyoming for 7 years between 2004 and 2011. So it's been a while, but I try to think of all the experiences that I had as a graduate student and also as being an international faculty member at the university for the last 9 years. And teaching a number of international students. So I will try to contribute to this panel from those two perspectives. And thank you for inviting me, Petra.
Yeah, we have
We have a list of questions we thought would be interesting for our audience to get answers to. And the first one of it is, what would you tell a friend preparing for a degree program? What would you tell a friend preparing for a degree program is about? What they should expect in classroom differences and in how students and teachers communicate with each other. And again, I would like to pass the microphone to whomever would like to answer first about, what would you tell a friend? And maybe, John, you start, because I know that more than graduate students will join you this fall.
Yes, so in my case, there are a couple of things I've picked up since coming here, and I didn't have ground knowledge. But if I'm to advise somebody, I would say, in the US, I see the system as more student-focused, and it's a learning-centered. It has an informal setting to the classroom. Whilst back home in Ghana, you don't have that informal setting. It's a formal setting, like an office, like the way a boss and an employer will relate. But here it's more like on a friendly level. You have the opportunity to approach a lecturer or a professor anytime you can. Back home in Ghana, you don't get such opportunities. I see here there's dedicated time for students in difficulty. If you have a difficulty, if you have a problem, say there's something you don't understand in the class, there is a time allocated on the curriculum or on the structure of things to go see the lecturer at some time, one-on-one, have a one-on-one meeting with him to understand things better. We don't have that in Ghana because most lecturers are, even the time to come to the lecture room, he sees it as an opportunity to do some other thing. And so it's like he's being forced. So beyond the lecture room, it's difficult to get him. Well, in some cases, you have TAs who are able to help, but the TAs are not able to do much like you want the professor to do. They try their best, but here you have time for professor, and then the TA also has his time. So if you can choose between who you want to see. And another thing I also pick is you can call a professor by his first name, which doesn't happen in Ghana. Our professors love titles, their titles. They feel they've invested so much in attaining that level, and so he wants to be addressed. So a student goes to a professor and he forgets to mention or say the title, and the next thing you know, you are being taken on. And you might lose grades, but the lecturer will feel disrespected, especially when you do it in front of other students or other colleagues he finds or he sees, should relate to him on his level. And you walk to the lecturer and you call him, hey John or John. And then you see students walking in the corridors, talking to a professor with their hands in their pockets. It hasn't happened in my country. Your hands have to be behind you. And in my country, there's one other thing I've also noticed. When talking to an elderly person and you are wearing a cap, it goes off because it shows a sign of respect. But here I see students in classrooms wearing their cap, talking to professors, and they feel freely to do it. So there's so much differences when it comes to the classroom, lecturer to student ratio. We lack amenities in the resources. So we are packed. In my undergrad level, we're like, we were about, I think, 50 or so in a class, which was too much. Some classes had 100. There were courses we got combined. Some courses we combined with other departments. And you go to the classroom and you are 150. You don't find a place to sit. You are standing. So this place presents a better and a more open learning atmosphere than what we had in Ghana. Thank you.
I would say it's quite the same in my country too, because professors are really strict. Like, if you want to talk to them, like sometimes we just stand in front of their office for hours because they have gone somewhere. We cannot call them. If we call them, they think it's a disrespect. We have a representative for the whole batch. He's the only one who communicates with the professor. No one else is supposed to communicate. So we just stand there, waiting for him or her to come back. And like he said, like we have to, talk as like Madam or Sir. Like if I talk to my professor by their first name, I will be kicked out from the program. They're very strict. Like he said, like our grades will be greatly affected by that because they know who they're grading, so they definitely take out on us. So things are like that. But here, professors are really welcoming. Like, I mean, my professor knew I was flying in beforehand. Like, she wanted to know everything happening. You know, she was helping me out throughout to transition, to help me get to know the place and everything. But like, it was a complete difference for me because I didn't know how to talk to people, the professors here, because like talking in first thing was just nuts to me. So, I mean, it took me some time, but you know, they're very informal. You can reach out to them anytime, and they really want to help. Because, like, in our countries, they want to assert dominance, to say like, I know more than you do. Like, you're a peasant to me. That is how they treat us. But it's not like that here at all. So that difference is really, really, I mean, I still cannot comprehend it completely, because I even have to gone to professors' home here, like they have invited me for meals, you know, they want to hang out, they want to talk, like they're very informal, they really, you know, open up about themselves, but not in my country. Nothing of that sort happened here. It is always, they always try to find a way to discriminate you rather than help you. Like here, they do not want to discriminate you. They want to help you. They want to help you succeed. They want to, you know, help you sometimes get to a better place than they are. You know, they will always find ways to help you in any way we can. Like I remember in my interview to come here, I said that in the website, I saw that there's a food science club here, and it really interested me. That is one of the reasons that I wanted to come here. And then like a week after I came here, my professor was like, oh, here's the contact, just talk to her and see, and you can be in the club. I was like, okay, you know, they're that involved, they're really helpful. So it has been a big difference for me here. So I would definitely say that. So it goes both ways. So we come in here as TAs. So we have students also. So they're also used to that informal space. So it is important to, you know, create your boundaries, you know, before starting the class. Otherwise, they kind of can take advantage of you and sometimes won't know where to stop or, you know, how to reach out, things like that. So it is always good to clear out things beforehand, before the semester starts, or like in the first class, you know, because you are a stranger here. So you have to, you know, cultivate a relationship as simultaneously maintaining a boundary with your students, you know. So you have to do both things. And also like when you're TA, there's a professor on top of you, you know, who's handling the course. So you have to be friendly with them, make sure you're, you know, doing the things they want to do, whilst maintaining a good relationship with the students also. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
So here I would like to share about like the class assessment or something like that. Because when I was undergrad students in China, actually we don't have much homework or like exam to do. The only assessment for the class is we only have the final exam, which is totally different in like in here. So and another thing is we also don't have like the syllabus, cannot like stuff like that. So I think it's totally different because I mean here, so we have like homeworks and like quiz question, like I mean almost every week, right? But so I mean I think it's a good thing because it can get the students more get involved in this class and like so they can get more motivation, right? So I think the reason why in China we don't have that many kinds of assessments is because we have a big population. So which means we will also have lots of like college students. But the problem is we don't have like many teachers. So which cause a problem like maybe one teacher will need to teach about 100 students for each class for each semester, which could be a problem. So they cannot set up homework because also they don't have TA for help them grading things like that. So I think it's a big difference. And also another thing is about the individual with the teamwork in the class. Usually in final we should have some group teamwork, like doing a group project or doing presentation. But in China, it's hard to do that because we usually have a big class, which means have lots of students here. So it's hard to do the individual presentation or something like that. So I think it's also different. And the last thing is, so typically we usually have the laboratory class, things like that. But in China, we don't have, we barely have the laboratory class. Yeah, so in China, we just study the theories instead. I think we're lacking the more practical, practical experience, things like that. So it's different. There's some difference.
Is back. Aksana, would you like to share your experience?
Yes, so I think I didn't mention in my introduction that I am originally from Russia, but I've lived in Wyoming since 2004, so Wyoming is my second home. And I lived in Laramie, as I said, for 7 years, and now I am based in Casper, Wyoming. So there are three things that I wanted to mention in response to that first question, what I would tell a friend preparing to start a degree program in the US. So I would talk to them about plagiarism and understanding of plagiarism, and I've personally experienced it, and I've also seen other international students being confused with expectations in the classroom regarding plagiarism. So I would address that, what it means, what citations mean, what copyright means, and things like that. And also, if I was an instructor in a classroom with international students in particular, I would definitely address those issues, and I will try to explain, and not in a threatening manner, but again, not assume that that my students will know. And I think everyone will benefit from that anyway. It's like with accessibility. I think it's always something that is worth repeating and teaching every student in general. The other thing that I would also address would be not to be afraid to ask stupid questions, and again, and also for the instructors, I would say not to be afraid of and not to be aware of assumptions, like if we assume that students should know that, it doesn't mean that that particular student would understand that. And I will just give an example. When I started my PhD program at the University of Wyoming, and I already was a master's student for a year before that, I came to my advisor to see him. And the first meeting I said, I know that a PhD student is expected to go and present at the conference, but I have no idea how to do that. And I was not afraid to say that. And he was very supportive. And there was another instructor who overheard our conversation, and she actually invited me to co-present right there and then, and even found some funding to pay for me go to the conference with them just in a month. So that was pretty magical. But if I didn't ask, and if they didn't act on my request, this would probably not happen for a while. And I really benefited in my graduate student career from this opportunity. So that's my second thing. And the third thing that I wanted to also mention that I would say to the student, don't be afraid to disagree. And I think a lot of us on this panel are coming from the cultures where it's not common to disagree with an instructor in a classroom. And in the US, it's completely fine. And it's also fine to disagree with your classmates. But again, you have to kind of figure out how to do that in a manner that is acceptable in this culture. But again, if you can prove, your point of view using sources and not just opinions. If you are doing it in an academically acceptable manner that you hopefully will figure out within the first semester. So that's fine to disagree. And it's also, I think, harder for international students oftentimes to speak up in the classroom, especially in a face-to-face, but maybe even in a Zoom environment, because we are aware of how we sound differently. We maybe are not used to speak up again in the classrooms because we are used to be on the listening side. And so I think those are the things that are important to understand for both students and for both instructors, especially if the students are being assessed on participation in the classroom. So those are the things, 3 things that I wanted to add. And I think that what other participants talked about, like less formality and other things, those are also great points, and assessments, differences in assessments. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, that brings you to the second question already, but we were planning to having a question and answer session afterwards, but you are looking like you have questions right away. So if this is the case, so just ask them now, since we're on this question, and then we go on to the next, if that's fine with you. Any question? Yeah, Molly, go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
How many other international students are in classrooms with you? And do you find that you get enough support from each other, or are you pretty much alone in the classroom with a bunch of Americans? How is it normally for you?
I'm pretty much alone in most of the classes I take. In most surroundings, actually, I'm the only international student, unless I go to an event or a place that international students are in. I'm the international student in most places, but I would say I do get a lot of support from my cohort and the students, because in my department, we currently have 2 like American students who are doing my master's with me. They are really supporting. I mean, they have been helpful since the day I've known them. They're driving me around to get to places I want to. They're always planning to hang out with me. If we want to study together, if we have questions, we discuss together. So they're always very helpful. So I've never had like a negative experience with an international student. With a native student here. But I have seen international students struggle, because like sometimes the language barrier can be very much for us, because I was trained in British English. I did not train in American English. So there's a big difference, even though there is basically English, because the slang and the words used here are very different. So sometimes when I'm saying something, they don't know what I'm talking about. So it takes time, and I feel like a lot of the times international students do not understand the slang used and the words used, and they can struggle to understand the speed, because a lot of people here talk very speed, in a high speed. So they sometimes struggle to understand what they're talking about. Because for me, I haven't had much trouble understanding, but I have seen a lot of students struggle with understanding, the words and stuff.
So in my case, there are quite a few international students in most of the classes I have taken. Some of the classes are combined with undergrads. So you see a lot more Americans in that class, as opposed to the graduate courses where you have more international students. Personally, I haven't had so much problem fitting in, because of the fact that I had other international courses, especially in my first semester. This semester, they are not much from my country, but there are some other international students from other countries. the problem I sometimes face, even with international students, is I find it hard to really hear from them when we are talking. So most of the time I'm nodding through the conversation as if I understand, but I don't really understand. Sometimes I can't hear it well, but I'm trying to adjust. When it comes to the professor presenting, it's sometimes fast. Some of the jargons they use, I'm not quite familiar. I remember when I came, I heard somebody say, I think the person was walking the dog, and then the dog pooed on the grass, and then they were two. So she told the friend, "That's gross." I was like, "What's this?" Because I didn't know what it meant. But later I asked a colleague, and he said, "Oh, it means it's not pleasant, or what the dog did." Yeah. I was like, okay, so some of the jargons, it's quite difficult getting along with, but with time, I'm adjusting with it. And then, like in construction has a universal term, language, but there are some technical stuff that differ. So I took a course in project management last semester, and then in some instances, the professor was mentioning some things I didn't understand. I had to go outside the class, after the class, to do a research on what it meant, to actually know what he was trying to push across. So the language barrier, generally, we have difficulties with it. If professors could slow down a little for us, I know it's an inborn thing. It's difficult to control it. It comes naturally, but they also have to understand there are other people in the class, because most of the classes has diverse student background. So if they could tone down a little, yes, it's difficult, but make a conscious effort to make us understand you. And then the jargons, you can explain it very well. We can adjust very well or better.
So I think to fix this problem is we can through two aspects. One is from professors' aspect. Maybe professor could get more encourage students getting together to discuss, like to do a group discussion session, so the students can get together to talk to each other. So I think the communication is the key point. Yeah, and through students aspect, I think, so just don't be too shy. Just if you want to ask questions, just ask them. And I think most of the students are very nice, right? So yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay. Aksana, would you like to share your opinion?
I just wanted to say, as far as it was interesting to hear from the current graduate students and to see that not much has changed in Wyoming in almost 20 years, you know, so with international folks, even in Laramie, that international students are still kind of on their own. I mean, on their own, like they kind of stand out in the classroom there by themselves oftentimes. And I think that faculty have more international experience than the traditional Wyomingite students, you know, who will be the majority. Maybe at the graduate level, it's a little bit different, but there are those issues completely that I've experienced when I was a graduate student back in 2000, like early 2000s. And those are all things that we just have to be used to. You know, we are going to be different and we just have to live with that. And you have to have some coping strategies, but at the same time, ask for help, not to feel that and know about the resources. And I always thought that International Student Coffee Hour was a great resource in Laramie. And I often went there and met some friends, and we had just a chit chat and just sometimes shared some ideas how to deal with things. But yeah.
Thank you, Aksana. Yes, another question, please. Oh, hold on.
It's not a question. I just want to make a statement that I taught in China English But anyway, one of the interesting things was that we had the same problems with understanding the language to a certain extent. Just one example, the kids came in one day and said to me, "Are you going to Spots Day?" I said, "Spots Day? What is Spots Day?" You know, I just had no idea, so I asked other people. Well, Spots Day is where you go to a track field and you run around and you race. It's a sports day, so it's a sports day. Yeah.
There's always spots.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just it works both ways. The other part was that we had the same idea. They were more formal there than they were here. And so, but we had four students who were roommates who just adopted us and just took us around town, just showed us everything. And just, otherwise we've been so isolated. It would have been for those four girls who just took us out of the way and just showed us all the whole city. It was just wanted to say what's both ways as a teacher too.
When you were talking about people needing to slow down to understand. I'm very hard of hearing, and I can't understand it when people talk fast. And they do talk faster, especially I find people that are intelligent and are professionals, and that's very difficult. All you can do is please ask them to slow down, but that's hard for people to do because that's what they're used to. The thing that's helped me is, sometimes they have the teleprompter so I can read it, and that helps, but that's not always the case. I hope we can see a change in that in academics.
I'm sorry, I was probably talking too fast, wasn't I?
Ask you to repeat what you said. But yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from, because, and what I hear from students is, it's okay to ask once, could you say that again? Right. But then blah, 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 blah. And they would have to ask again, and then it's not so easy anymore. And it goes on, and the more often you have to say, I still didn't get it, or this was again too fast, the more embarrassing it gets for the students. So definitely for instructors to keep that in mind is a very big thing to do, I'd say. So I think we already, or you already answered the second question, which was, what did you notice first when you came here about cultural differences in being a student here versus being a student back home, right? So I think we can go on to the third one, which is, can you think of any ways to make understanding your experiences in transitioning to US education culture more understandable to your professors and fellow classmates in the US? Part of it you already answered, I think, but maybe you have something to add. Sure. Go ahead.
I don't think a lot of people understand what our backgrounds are, because this is a first world country. I am from a third world or like a developing country. So our lifestyle was completely different. Like here, I'm not discriminating, but here, even at a minor annoyance, people do complain, but our lives are far more harder back home. Like no one understands it unless you have been to a developing country and lived there yourself. No one understands what life is out of the United States, like, how different it is. So at least a way we could convey that to the professors would be to at least do a presentation, like talking about the problems and the culture, or like things like that. And like we said, we are very formal. Like when we first come here, we don't exactly understand how to, connect or like talk to the professors here, because we're used to having a very formal, very distant nature, and a professor who doesn't know that can take not offense, but like at least think that that person is distancing themselves, they don't want to get closer. They can interpret it that way. But understanding from, at least trying to understand from our perspective, we're used to that. We're in a new country, we don't know anyone here. So we always tread lightly with very high caution, because any step can backfire us. We are on immigrant visa. If our visa gets revoked, we get deported. So we have to tread really lightly. We cannot, go and do anything as we please. So, if professors can understand that, like, we're being cautious and not, trying to be distant or anything like that. This is just, like, we're still trying to figure out things, And also, like, if we can do a presentation, like when I first came here, I got to do a presentation on my culture to the professors and the students in my department, to let them know what kind of a culture I'm from. But still, like, the problems that we face on the day-to-day still there's a lot. So I try to incorporate at least a few of those things when I'm teaching, because I'm from a different culture that could actually enrich the teaching experience also. So I try to incorporate small snippets of things into the teaching as well. And one of the things I really like my department did was in the beginning of the semester in the fall, they had like a lunch for all of us to get together, to get to know my master's or doctoral students and also the professors, so that they get to know each other, they get to know the culture, things like that. That actually really helped for me to know who are the professors, because I'm in the ad building itself is really huge. So I really don't know where my department is, faculty is, unless they actually introduce themselves to me, So those things really help me. So I guess a few things like that could help to go a long way. Thank you.
Well, I think ISS, the International Students Office, organize a lot of programs to integrated into the US system. I may be mistaken, but on a few occasions I've been there, it's mostly the international students who attended those programs and a few Americans. You don't see the faculty there that much. So if it could be extended to the faculty at that level, so during such programs, they could also, get to relate to us, to know much about our culture, and then it can be, have an impact on the way they relate to us in the classroom. They could understand us better. Yeah.
Yeah, so as I said before, I think the communication is the key point, because through communication, like for example, you and your professor, and you are talking a specific program or project, and through talking, you can talk to him or her what is your thoughts, and maybe internally you already tell him or her about the cultural differences. Maybe he can understand more. So I think this is a key point. So you need to talk. So that your teammate, your classmate, and your professor know what you are thinking about, and what is your the culture? Maybe what's the difference between China and American? So communication, yeah.
Aksana, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this topic?
So what I'm thinking about how to help faculty support international students, I think it's important to build accessible courses, and international students will definitely benefit from those resources. So for example, if they're creating videos, to make sure that they have transcripts or they have captions. The same thing for Zoom meetings, you know, if to make sure that students can hear well, that there is a live transcript. So those are things that will benefit others as well, people with hearing disability or other things. So, and also just going back to what I said about assuming and not assuming, I think that faculty need to be aware of, like, not assume that students will figure it out on their own and provide additional resources to those students. Send them to the writing center or maybe work with them, help them to learn writing, especially at the very beginning of the graduate school. This is super important. But I think for every stage, it's very important to figure it out. And they need this extra support. Do not assume that students can do public speaking on their own. Again, provide them resources on how they can access support and help them with public speaking. Digital literacy, you know, anything and everything that can benefit their students academically. And I primarily talk about academic here, but because others already touched on other sides of being accepted. And I think it is super important to have this feeling that you are accepted, that you are listened to, even though you are maybe not coming from that developed country, but again, you have also your own perspective and you want to share it and you want people to know where you're coming from, and maybe they will understand you a little bit better. So I think those are the things that I wanted to bring up.
Thank you, Aksana. Any other questions for or comments again regarding what can instructors do? What can not just instructors, community members? What can people in Laramie do to include our international students more in their community, whether it be church? I hear a lot of international students are joining church communities, and that helps them a lot. But there are definitely other communities too in town. But I'm still trying to figure out which ones they are, you know, that could welcome international students more. So please.
First a comment and then a question. I don't know if all of you can answer the question, but you may know others within the international student community. First comment, one of the things that I found was folks make assumptions about what they think a country is or where somebody is from and what that world looks like. When I lived in Japan, part of Japan that I lived in was incredibly rural. Many of my students within the high school I taught at were incredibly poor comparatively. But the assumption, oh, you were in Japan, you must have been so technologically advanced, like, well, not so much. And that I get students, I teach at the high school, not the university. So I will get international students who are also dealing with the complexities of an American high school while their parents might be teaching or taking classes. Would it be beneficial for professors and educators at the university level to know how to reach out and ask questions? Because there are some times where I know I have students I can pull aside and ask them questions about how they're doing or what they may need, where how to engage in those discussions with folks who are not used to Americans just being like, just being very blunt. So that's been my experience, that how to communicate. And as you said, communication is so just talking. Just, you know, I have students that are celebrating Ramadan right now, and I check in with them. How are you doing? You know, how is your energy level? And, you know, and most of them this year are like, well, it's really good this year, which is strange because we have more daylight right now for them. But then my real question is, as a high school teacher, as a public school educator, it is a layer of complexity for those students. And I was wondering if you had friends, or maybe yourselves, I'm not going to assume that you have children that are in our systems,
But if you know folks that do, what are the things that we in the public, and especially as a high school teacher, can help with? Because I know that's sometimes very stressful, not just having school, but then having family making the adjustment. And if there was any suggestions that you would make for that I could take back to my high school teachers.
Should I speak up here? Because I have kids in the public schools, and I'm not sure if anyone on the panel have any experience with American public education. So I do not have a high schooler. I have two kids. One is in preschool in Casper, and the other one is in 5th grade. So so my kids go into a dual immersion program. So, and I put them in a dual immersion program intentionally because my kids are celebrated in those programs because they speak my native language, which is Russian. They speak my husband's native language, which is Polish. And then my daughter is learning Mandarin, Chinese for half a day and English for another half a day. And so teachers who teach in those programs, so first of all, they're taught for half a day by Chinese native speakers, you know, so in this case. And then English teachers who are teaching in those programs, they are working collaboratively with those Chinese teachers. And so they will oftentimes ask me, we're having a topic on this particular holiday. Do you celebrate it in your family, for example? So they will ask which holidays are celebrated in our family, which are not celebrated. And so, and they will let us pick and choose whether we want the child to participate in those types of things. And I find it very sensitive. So I personally value it as a parent of a different cultural background. I usually allow my children to participate in most things, but sometimes I don't want them to do certain things. And those things are respected. The other thing that is, for me, is a big issue and for my family is the pledge. And I always tell my teachers of my children at the beginning of the school year that my children are going to be excused from participating in the Pledge of Allegiance. And I always felt respected in this way, you know, so that's, those are the things that are very important, I think, for those children as well, because they are going to be singled out for one thing or another, you know. So, and for example, right now with the war happening in Ukraine, and me being, you know, of Russian descent, my husband being Polish, having full Ukrainian name, you know, my daughter is being teased at school for, you know, like being called names, you know, because she's homeless Russian or whatever, you know, she just told me today that. And I wish what teachers are not doing in her school right now, I wish they were addressing those issues, you know, and I think they should have conversations with those children because right now, maybe they're not comfortable about talking those things. And I understand, you know, I don't want to talk about them either. And oftentimes you don't want to, you know, like to push too much, but at the same time, I think it's important for her to feel supported and for people like this to be supported and just to be sensitive. And I think you are doing already a lot of those things. George, is this George who was talking, or did I catch the name correctly? I think like with Ramadan, you know, like you've been checking.
Will. Will.
Yeah, Will. Okay, sorry. So, so if you're just being sensitive and trying to understand where your students are coming from and listening to them, I think that you are already doing a lot of things. Just like keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Aksana. That was very insightful. Any other? Please.
Okay, so you mentioned that there is a way you can reach out to us to help. Yes, there's a way to reach out. You can always reach out. But there's a problem. I feel, coming from my background, we are trained to be suppressed. We don't speak out. So it's difficult coming in a short time to break that. You see all other kids or other students relating well, you know, being coming out of their way to participate. But we, most of the time, tend to be more, on our own, because that's how we are trained. That's our culture. You are trained to be suppressed. So if there are programs, I know there are programs, but if a lot more can be done to break that, it takes time. It doesn't take just a month or two. It can take years. But if more can be done, so that fear or panic or suppressive can be taken away, and then we can be approachable. We can also relate better with
Would you like to add something, Doris?
I think maybe so typically I think each of our international students we have separate group like Chinese people. We have the specific group from other countries. We have the specific group and we also have the kind of the present who is responsible for help us to deal with something. So maybe you can contact them. So to ask them if your group needs help or something like that. I think that's maybe helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Doris. Other questions?
Can I add just something else? I think another idea that I have is if you could invite those parents of the children and present, on whatever topic they can present. Maybe it will be about country. Maybe they can co-present with their children. Maybe they have something else to share. If they're teaching at the university, they are professionals in one field or another. That could be some kind of career orientation, but at the same time, they can share their own experiences coming from different cultural backgrounds. And I think that could be beneficial as well. And it will also help the kids who are from other cultures to see their parents in the classroom and be proud of it where they're from, so I think that would make me proud if I was a high school student or even elementary education student, if my parent is talking to my peers, sharing their expertise.
Yeah, I just would like to second that because I'm a mom of 2 kids too, and they went through the Laramie school system. And I wasn't in their classrooms. I was invited to talk about German holidays and German culture. And it was just amazing to see these big eyes looking at me and listening to my accent and like sponges absorbing the information they got from a different culture, right? So I definitely think that's a great idea, but that's a high school or elementary school, how to do it at the university. And Devini, I was just stunned about your department having you present at the beginning of the semester. Why doesn't every department do that? I mean, this is something to promote, I think, right? Because it was only a good experience for you, right? You only benefited from it. There were no bad outcomes, right? Because what I am sometimes afraid of as a teacher in an international classroom is to, as you said, to say the wrong thing. And if you ask a student to talk more about his or her culture, do you know if the student wants to, or are you imposing on the student? So, and again, it depends on the personality. The one would like to, the other doesn't. So, but for departments, just to have an open invitation to international students at the beginning of the semester, plan an event and have students present, those who want, who would like to, and others just listen or don't even participate, you know. So that's for me seems to be a really an idea to pursue, I'd say. I see Molly nodding and
It would be beneficial to all of the students in your classrooms too. If there were maybe a poster outside of the department of all the international students that are teaching in this department, where they're from, some information in case they, you know, they can see this as they're walking to office hours and they can absorb this information even if they weren't able to attend a presentation or there wasn't enough time to have one. I think it would be nice to have that information for the professors who are teaching you as well. I mean, on every angle.
Yeah, thanks for the suggestion, Molly. Oh, just a moment, because again, from my experience, in first time of class, of course, everybody introduces yourself, you do icebreakers, and as an instructor, you are so involved that you walk out of the classroom and say, where was this guy from? And, so yeah, it helps to have pictures of instructors and students, definitely.
I just want to say, one of the ways that students can get more involved with other students, high school level or the college students, is through sports or through clubs, different types of clubs. And I think Doris can speak to the fact that she came here as a sports person, and I think I think it helped her form a community beyond, with lots of friends and things beyond that. But there's all kinds of clubs and things in schools, high schools and things that it would be nice to be encouraged to participate in those types of things too. So maybe you can talk about Dolores, to talk about her experience.
Yeah, so when I first time came here, so actually we have 10 people, 10 Chinese students came here to learn how to cross-country ski. And then second year, just we only have 2 students, including me, stay here. So I mean, for those 2 years, what I learned was like, I mean, back to the communication, right? It's just because we every time we go outside for like competition, and we live together and eat together, so we get a lot of chance to talk to each other, like how you're feeling and how the race going, like something like that, and through that we also like talk about our like cultural things, like what's the like when we eating food, like we usually talk about what's the difference between the food here and the food in China. So that's what we communication, yeah. That's what we can. So yeah, I think it's important. Yeah. He is also one in. I think he already stayed in Laramie for 10 years. Yeah, because he stayed here for the high school, then undergrad, then PhD. Yeah. So Chen is my boyfriend, and he's also from China. So yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Doris. I'm just looking here at the 4th and last question on my sheet, and if I'm not mistaken, a lot of it has already been addressed, but let me just read it out loud. Are there actions or a knowledge base you could share to help professors and students make you feel more included in the classroom environment? And here we're talking about the classroom environment. So maybe as a last and concluding question, you would like to address this topic?
I actually have a few things to add to the previous discussion and like just a combination. I think one of the main, like when John said that we're used to being suppressed, that just blew my mind away. That's completely true. Like we're completely used to being suppressed in every way possible. So like with that, imposter syndrome is a really big deal when we come here. That like it's not like I don't feel like I belong here. A lot of times it feels like I'm living in some other parallel universe. I do not perceive that I'm here and doing this. I still cannot comprehend that. So I mean, like people who were born here and have been here for a long time, it's just usual life for us. But like this is a rural area in the US. Like for me, this is luxury. You know, because a rural area in our country is like, they don't have electricity, they don't have water, they don't have food, and they don't have even the basic necessities, and most children do not go to school because they're that poor. They don't have food for day, like right now. I think Sri Lanka is one of the poorest countries in the world. More and more people are becoming below the poverty line. So a lot of people do not have the basic facilities or anything. So like here, this is like dreamland, you know, because people think this is like very, very normal, you know, very secluded, you know, not many things here, but for us, this is a big deal. For us, this is a really, really big deal for people who are from third world countries, you know, and like professors could actually like to make, take some actions to make us feel home, as in like make us feel more accepted, more seen, you know, because we all like, I mean, like when we were talking, I just realized that I always want to make sure that I'm not failing in any way. Like I want to complete all my TA duties and all my subjects in the highest way possible, because we are used to punishment. We are used to getting punished. So in my mind, it's like I'm in a foreign country. What if I don't do something, and what will my professor's reaction will be? I do not know that, and I do not want to know that, you know? So like, that is like insane amount of pressure to have in your head. So a professor can be more, I mean, can just say like, it's okay if you do not, I mean, not being very, you know, wishy-washy, but still, you know, having some amount of wiggle room in a way, you know, because like nothing bad will happen to you if you don't do that. Because in my country, if you don't do that, you get punished. You get some form of punishment, even in your undergrad, even in the university, you get punished. Like even if it's not in a formal way, you get bashed in every way possible, in front of colleagues, in front of students, in front of professors. There's a lot of things that go on, which people here obviously they do not know. So they could, you know, make sure the students understand, like, it's not gonna be like that. It's very chill here, you know? Because in my mind, it's like, oh, you accepted me and you got here, you gave me this opportunity, and I do not want to fail you. That is always going in my mind. Like, this is a big deal for me. I know we don't get paid much but for me, that amount that I get paid is a big deal, because for me, it would take probably 10 years to earn that money in my country. So, you know, that is a big deal. And also, like in other ways, professors, instructors can make sure whatever assignment that they're giving to make the instructions for that assignment explicit, because we might not understand exactly what the professor means. Like other American students might understand what they mean, but we might not, you know, because we are used to another way of doing assignments or quizzes or anything like that. And like when we write a paper, the structure that I use back in my country is completely different to the structure that's used here. So they can be, very explicit or more descriptive in what they're expecting. And I'm not saying to grade native students and international students in two different ways, but they can support the international students more, and like John said, like we're used to being suppressed, we're not used to speaking out. Like a lot of international students would not reach out to the professor if they're having a problem. So it would be useful for them, the professors themselves, to reach out to the students and say, hey, if you're having a problem, please talk to me. Like I want to help you to reach your best possible grade, or succeed in this subject. If they hear that alone is enough for them, because we don't hear that in our countries where they're like, if you don't do this, you fail. I'm gonna search for a way to make you fail this subject. So we do not reach out to the professors. We're used to talking to a friend and seeing if they understand what the assignment is about, maybe get a vague idea and do something that we think is the assignment. We're not used to reaching out to the professor. So it is good for the professor to say, it's okay to reach out to me. You can reach out to me with anything you have. And, there are so many resources available in the university, like the ISS, like the Writing Center, so many resources in the library, at the ECTL. It's just a matter of connecting the dots, because we're international students. We don't know most of things that are going on in the university. And the professor could just say, oh, these resources are available to you, just feel free to reach out to them, or like if you have a problem with reaching out to them, I can speak to them, because sometimes an international student can be scared to write an email because our English is not perfect. We are scared of writing emails because email is a professional thing. When you reach out to a person, you have to sound professional, be professional, and also again, a lot of people are scared of reaching out. So they can provide some sort of help, at least have some sort of connection to all the centers and things, resources available to the students, because everyone here is willing to help. It's just that international students are sometimes very scared to ask, So yeah, that's what I have to say.
So I don't know how I'll turn this, I don't know if it's a complex but we most of the time feel we've been done when we express ourselves about something we don't understand in the class. I have had the experience. There are quite a number of times there's something I don't understand so well. I feel, well, back home, that's how it is. When you express you make other students see you don't know, you tend to be picked on. So I have that ingrained in my mind, and it kind of makes it difficult for me to come out and ask for help. Sometimes I am getting over it with time. I don't know if the professors know whether they have international students in their class. A student can decide not to speak. Probably when he speaks, by the accent, you know. But what if a student doesn't speak? How do they know we are international students to help? Generally, they know international students have problems. But if I don't speak, how do you know I'm an international student? My color, skin color counts, because the Americans who are black. So how would you know I'm an international student to address or to give me, to extend extra hand to me to know or to help me in getting fitted in? Well, we are struggling sometimes, we struggle sometimes, yeah.
Especially in your case, you don't have an English name really, right? So very often we go by the name that sounds international, but it doesn't work always. You're right. When you were speaking to me and you two, I was thinking of what is the online orientation doing to you? the online international student the orientation. Is it helpful at all to get the information online? Is it even more helpful than getting it in person because you can go back to the modules and everything? So you're nodding. So it's good to have things online. Okay, thanks for that's valuable information.
Because I think for the online, the online one, it can help students maybe they didn't catch up all things. I mean, for the in-person one, so they can back to watch the online video to catch up what is the information they need.
I was just going to say, I think all of you should get ready to be part of next fall's orientation, right? Help your departments reach out to see the incoming internationals just like you, because you are just amazing and the best outreach for us.
Do you want me to also address that last question, or Doris, are you still speaking? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. So I just wanted to share one resource that I find personally very helpful as both former international student and current, faculty member. I use Hofstede's cultural dimensions theory a lot. So Hofstede, I think that's a researcher from Netherlands, and some of you may be familiar with that, where cultural differences are looked at from 6 different perspectives, and 4 were the original ones, like individualism versus collectivism, uncertainty avoidance, that's another category that they look at, power distance, that I heard a lot from the other panel participants talking about, that power distance is differently perceived in different cultures, and masculinity versus femininity, and there are 2 other dimensions that I cannot recall right now. They were added later. But I think if you are aware of those categories, and if you think about your own culture from that perspective, and then try to think about American culture, and that's when you start understanding, okay, in America, people are less formal. That means that the power distance is much smaller in America versus, let's say, Sri Lanka, or I didn't get where some of the participants were from, like or China or even Russia, but at the same time, it's a very masculine and very individualistic society, while we may be coming from more collectivist, feminine type of cultures where caring and being part of the group and team is more important than being on your own, competitive, and just achieve the task no matter what. I mean, to your personal benefit versus the benefit of the group. So those are, I think, the things. And again, uncertainty avoidance, that's another piece, with assessments when they're kind of vague and we don't know what the instructor wants us to do. That's harder for a student with high uncertainty avoidance culture, where they need to have more precise wording and more instructions and things like that. And I think if I find that particular theory very helpful. Again, Hofstede, cultural dimensions, if you want to Google it or read a little bit more about it. I think that's very useful tool for understanding cultural differences.
Thanks, Aksana. Yeah, and it's Hofstede. It was not transcribed correctly, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's I was looking up how to pronounce it. If I'm not sure how Dutch would pronounce it. It's Hofstede, and then Hofstede. That would be, I guess, more Americanized pronunciation of that Hofstede, and then put my accent in addition to that. So that makes it more complex.
Oh, an accent. Even Americans have an accent. That's what I always tell my students, right? But so don't feel bad about yours. I think we are pretty much at the end of our discussion panel. Are there any questions left that our panel members can address? Yes, yeah.
Well, I was just gonna make a couple of closing comments. They are really kind of thinned out a little. Peter and I are really used to preaching to the choir at the University of Wyoming, meaning the people who come see us already know what we have to say and they're leaders in the community. What helps us is every time we can tap on the shoulder of a department chair, or we can get a faculty. Peter and I play twice a semester, usually at the ECTL, doing intercultural communication skills, exactly the kind of things that Aksana was describing at the end there. And it's just outreach. You guys, your voices will be heard. This is recorded. So we'll incorporate some comments and try to get this in teaching materials so we can reach out.
If I may add, because, regarding reach out, we have a meeting with Jimmer and the VP of Graduate Education very soon, and I definitely would like to pick up on your suggestion to have these kind of international student presentations at the beginning of the semester or during orientation week, or whenever your head of department can fit it in the schedule at the beginning of the semester. So yeah, that was my big takeaway, and thank you so much for joining us, all of you, Aksana, Demi, John, Doris. It was wonderful having you here, and I think it was very instructional for us as audience, and I hope that you feel good also about sharing your background, your culture in this small group but very interesting group, I think. Thank you again.